Hey, what's up, y'all? And of course, welcome to another alternative factuals video. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the Watchmen season 1 episode 1. Obviously, that just came out Sunday, which was the 20th. And we're going to be discussing some of the things you probably missed in the episode, or maybe didn't understand the meanings of those certain topics or subject matters, or specific little clues that they left in general. But before I dive into the details of the episode and what everything meant, as well as some information you may or may have not known about some of those things, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you're feeling. And without further ado, let's kind of just dive into this. Okay, so I'm gonna try and do this in some sort of order, or what I perceive as order, and then from then on we'll just move forward as the video progresses, obviously. So if you've seen the first episode of the Watchmen, then this is obviously a video for you. Now I would recommend clicking off if you have not seen the show and you're interested in seeing the show, because obviously we'll be going into spoiler territory. But okay, so basically we kind of see what the Watchmen is going for. Like I said in other videos, is this a continuation of that universe in terms of its probable and most likely outcome in terms of the timeline. Remember, this is not based on the movie. The movie did make some minor modifications when it came to the whole Watchmen universe and the Ozymandias and Adrian Veidt situation. Of course, it took a different route. That's the movie. Basically, we're following the timeline that follows strictly by the comic book. So this is the live action version of the comic book. And at this point, basically, you can consider this post Doomsday Clock, since that's kind of the idea behind it, where this universe is still continuing after Doomsday Clock. And Ozymandias, Adrian Veidt, is basically an older gentleman who is perceived dead in the season so far, and we kind of know this based off of what we saw in the newspaper. I think that was about like 27 minutes into the episode, but don't hold me to that in terms of timing. But we did get some sort of confirmation of some sorts that he's perceived dead in this universe. But okay, so let's kind of dive into the things that I think people need to pay attention to, and some of the things as well that I think people missed. So as soon as you even start watching the episode, off the bat, the episode is just opening up with very racial related things when it comes to African Americans, of course, because remember, race and race relations and stuff like that was very heavily integrated into the American government, because the American government was indeed founded on very non-friendly feelings towards people who were not white Europeans. So this is something that's obviously going to be a part of that timeline too. Some things are going to be very similar to our very own timeline. It's just human nature to some degree. In some way, shape, or form, certain events are going to play out either exactly alike or very similarly. But okay, so we already know that this takes place in 2019. That's been confirmed in the show. And then basically what we know as well is that Vietnam is now a state now. And if you've seen the Watchmen comics, the United States wins the Vietnam War with the help of, the Blue Superman called Dr. Manhattan, obviously. And, this all kind of transpired under the tutelage or under the leadership of Richard Nixon, who was the president all the way into the mid-1980s. Now, with this information actually being relatively public for the most part, what's going to happen going forward, at least in this universe, is because of this whole situation happening in the mid-1980s, in the Watchmen universe, the Vietnam becomes a United State in 1985. And basically what that means is, for the most part, Vietnam is a part of the United States now. So basically, since they won that war, they have that access to that territory, much like Puerto Rico is a United States territory. Similar concept with Vietnam. But moving forward, that's going to be somewhere that they can go freely, and that's somewhere that they conquered. And then remember, the character that Regina King is playing, Angela, is actually born right outside of Vietnam, before the whole White Knight situation happened. And yeah, that was very interesting. Now, reparations is the next thing that I see a lot of people kind of trying to figure out. Obviously, this is a direct correlation to reparations. Remember, you have Redfordations and reparations. Redfordations is basically the same thing as reparations, but it goes under a different name due to the president, who was Robert Redford. And yes, if you know who Robert Redford is, he's an actor who actually was president in the Watchmen universe for 28 years, because during Nixon's term, he eliminated the limitation for how long someone can be president. And Robert Redford is obviously an actor, and to kind of give you more specific of who he is, he's the same guy who was in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., basically the dude that was in the Captain America Winter Soldier, the same dude who was in charge of all that, who Nick Fury had to come in and use his other eyeball to lock him out the system and basically expose all of Hydra, because Robert Redford, his character, was a part of Hydra. Now I'm going to skip over the whole situation with Angela and her kids, because even though some people are asking like, oh, those are her kids, did they cheat, whatever, the kids are adopted. Their biological parents were killed during White Night, so that's something you don't really need to worry about, at least not right now. And basically the raining squid is a direct reference to the Watchmen comic, where Adrian Veidt actually turned a nuclear war around by dropping a genetically modified squid monster on Manhattan that killed thousands of people. But however, that plan actually worked, which caused a nuclear war, or the tension between Russia and the US, to stop and thus unite them against what they believe to be an alien invasion. So basically throughout the series, we're going to see that a lot of people are going to wake up to the truth that a lot of this is not real. Their universe is under a false sense of peace in a lot of ways, and I think that's what's going to be this downward spiral. There's a huge conspiracy, and that's kind of what they've been hinting at the end of the episode with this whole situation, and basically the way that the government is operating, as well as, you know, everyone who's involved in this conspiracy as well. Now what we do know is that the 7th Cavalry is a white nationalist group, very similar to, you know, the KKK to some degree, you know, their beliefs and the way that they operate, as well as, you know, just their level of education clearly in this series and all that stuff, as well as, you know, we have the Pod basically, and Detective Looking Glass, who uses hypnosis to interrogate the 7th Cavalry, and them using the Rorschach symbol. And one thing I've actually seen a lot of people confused about is they feel like, why are they using Rorschach's mask when he was a hero? Yes, Rorschach was a hero, but for the most part, the ideology of a hero is relatively relative. The idea of right and wrong is based on perspective, and, you know, based on societal norms and what we accept as right and wrong. So that's what makes this interesting in terms of, you know, the Watchmen in general, because a lot of their actions are very questionable, or just in general the way that they move about things are interestingly different, because their perspective is different, because their timeline played out a lot differently compared to our timeline. Now a lot of people want to know who's the guy who was riding the white horse at the end. Well, I kind of don't, well, I already said spoilers at the beginning of this video. So basically he is Adrian Veidt, aka Ozymandias. And if you've seen the like I said in a couple of times, I think if you've seen the newspaper early in the episode, supposedly Adrian Veidt is supposed to be dead, and I think what's going to happen is he's going to try and, I guess, try and manipulate or try and find a way to, you know, recreate the accident of Dr. Manhattan, because on his birthday in the episode you see that he has a watch. And, you know, what made the whole Dr. Manhattan situation a thing was because, you know, originally before Dr. Manhattan became Dr. Manhattan, he used to work at his father's watch shop, meaning he knew how to put his body back together, because he knew how to put a clock back together in such a form that was so perfect. And I think that's what's going on here. You're going to start to see little things like that, as well as they did make a reference to Dr. Manhattan. We did see him in a news clip when they were watching him on Mars, so that's going to be very fun, and that's going to be very interesting. But I'm not going to get into every waking second detail of this episode, because, you know, obviously there's a lot of stuff in there that I can break down, a lot of references, and a lot of this just has to do with the comics and how well you pay attention to it, as well as the correlations you make to a lot of the references and the characters and who they represent, who they are, and what they're supposed to be in this universe, as well as how certain events played out. But if you're new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you thought about the series, the first episode. I actually enjoyed it. Some people probably would feel like it's SJW because of the whole black agenda, and, you know, supposedly them having a lot of African American characters already in the episode within the first episode already. Personally, I think it's very relevant, because, like I said, it ties a lot to history, and I think we'll get a lot deeper into a lot more ethnicities and races as the show goes on, because, like I said, some things are just a part of human nature, unfortunately. But yeah, and I hope to see you later on. Peace out.